Okay, back again for this time Act 3, Scene 4, and I'm on page 89 of the script. This is a very long scene, so I'll probably need to break this video into two parts because I think the app will only let me record 25 to 30 minutes or so before it stops itself. But this scene is obviously, I think it's very long, but really it sort of has several, I like to call them movements or ideas, concepts that are explored within it. There's first of all, obviously, the interaction between Malvolio and Olivia, but then there's obviously as well the material between Olivia and is it Viola, or I can't quite remember, but and then there's the fight sequence where Viola and Sir Andrew are crazily backing away from each other, and then obviously we come back together with Olivia Antonio coming in and trying to save Viola too. So there's quite a few things to look at here. So we'll work slowly through it, but I'm going to try and continue that comparative examination because hopefully that will help you in terms of the nature of the sort of way that you're going to discuss these texts. And let me suggest to you that the performance here is so close to the script, and as we move away from something that's so close into the film adaptation by Trevor Nunn that we're going to watch, the task will get easier and easier, but working out how to do it with these nuanced differences will just make it seem so much easier again when the differences are far more pronounced. Okay, so if you can just be following along in your script, I'll help you a little bit with what's going on, but also really mainly doing this for the purposes of talking about that comparison. So in Act 3, Scene 4, again, I'm just using the summaries at the top of the opposite page. Olivia is looking forward to Cesario coming back and having another opportunity to entertain him, sends for Malvolio expecting the usual formal self, but of course he comes out in his cross-gartered yellow stockings, and we have one of the most comedic moments of the play. Malvolio's behaviour is strange. He quotes to her from the forged letter. She thinks that he's mad, and of course the others are called to take him away. I want to look here at how, Malvolio reacts. I want to look at how Sir Toby continues to hammer Malvolio and manipulate and deceive him into the idea that he himself is possessed. The punishment that is loaded upon Malvolio is quite brutal when you think about it within the context of Elizabethan England. What Sir Toby is trying to do in this scene is convince Malvolio that he himself is mad and convince Malvolio that he's possessed. And if you think about the consequences of that, this could lead to a range of really torturous treatments. There's no sort of mental health system. As we see later, we see Malvolio being locked in a dark room, which is essentially what would happen until the spirits abated. So the whole idea of what happens to Malvolio here, I think it's interesting to look at a comparison because it can be played quite comedically, and the comedic playing of it really subverts the very, very serious nature of what's going on. This treatment of a servant who the aristocracy or the nobility sees as trying to achieve something above their station, says something very clearly about this sort of power imbalance or this power structure. So let's have a look at that and realize that this whole scenario has been concocted, of course, by Maria because she sees Malvolio as being uppity, as being too prim and proper, perhaps a little bit two-faced as well. So let's have a look at that. It's quite funny, but it has that serious subtext sitting underneath it. So think about how those two things work together.
I have sent after him. He says he'll come. How shall I feast him? What bestow of him? For youth is bought more oft than begged or borrowed. I speak too loud. Where's Malvolio? He's sad and civil and suits well for a servant with my fortunes. Where is Malvolio?
He's coming, madam.
So notice even the delivery of that line raises the comedy.
But in very strange manner, he is sure possessed, madam.
Why, what's the matter? Does he rave?
No, madam, he does nothing but smile. Your ladyship were best to have some guard about you if he come, for sure the man is tainted in his wits.
Go call him hither. I am as mad as he, if sad and merry madness equal be.
So notice here, if we've had a scene with Sebastian and Antonio between the last scene that we looked at, but notice that we're continuing that sense of empathy being built towards Olivia here, and the tonal quality is the same. There's that harshness in the voice, that sort of sense of frustration. Counterpoint that with the joy almost in Mariah's voice of the fact that, Malvolio is coming, but in this very strange manner. What it does is diminishes our sympathy for Malvolio. So this is a classist reading. We could, if we want to take the Marxist approach, we could say that the director here has chosen to side with the upper class characters, that is, draw out our empathy for Olivia, for her as someone who is powerful and deserving of comfort in this world, and has diminished our sympathy for Malvolio, who is trying to be something that he is not deserving to be, that is, trying to be the same level of power and influence as the nobility. Let's have a look at how that continues to play out in this, in the arrival of Malvolio.
How now, Malvolio? Oh.
So even in that, I'll pause it a second too late, but even in where the camera is positioned there, although this is a stage play, it's a recorded version of the stage play, where the camera is positioned there with Malvolio's legs cross-guarded in the yellow stockings in the foreground, and the reaction shot of Olivia's in the background, that constructs meaning too. We can see this shock, and the way that she says Malvolio, oh, at the end also creates meaning, and adds something that the script does not suggest necessarily is there, apart from perhaps the nature of the iambic beats.
Sweet lady.
Characters' facial expression choices. Remember, Malvolio has been told by the letter to smile, and he doesn't normally smile.
Smilest thou? I sent for thee upon a sad occasion.
Sad, lady? I could be sad. It does make some obstruction in the blood, this cross-gartering, but what of that?
Now remember, Malvolio doesn't speak in iambic pentameter, he speaks in plain verse.
As the very true sonnet is, please one and please all.
So again, camera angle. Look at the camera angle. What is that meant to do? That highlights the comedy for the viewer of the video at home, because we're looking up at his crutch. There's this pompous ridiculousness being highlighted by the camera angle here. All of these things wouldn't affect an audience of the stage play, watching it live in the audience. But obviously, to get used to talking about film language, the camera angle here, the close-up nature, the position that the viewer is made to take is relevant, and it does construct meaning. It undermines Malvolio in this instance. Normally shooting people from underneath, like that, looking up at them, increases the sense of power. But of course, doing that to Malvolio when he's not deserving of that power, and when he looks so foolish, has the exact opposite effect.
Why, how now, man? What is the matter with thee?
Not black in my mind, though yellow in my legs. It did come to his hand, and commands shall be executed. I think we do know the sweet Roman hand.
So think about even those little additions, the little prop use and the little giggle that he gives.
Wilt thou go to bed, Malvolio?
The dropping of the peach, at the mention of going to bed. All of these things add. But look at what they add. They don't add confusion, they add comedy.
And I'll come to thee.
God comfort thee. Why dost thou smile so, and kiss thy hand so oft?
How do you, Malvolio?
At your request, yes. Nightingales answer doors.
Why appear you with this ridiculous boldness before my lady?
Be not afraid of greatness. 'Twas well writ.
What meanest thou that, Malvolio?
Some are born great,
Huh?
some achieve greatness,
What sayest thou?
and some have greatness thrust upon them.
So unfortunately, I'm assuming that's going to in the screen capture, but you miss the thrusting motion, of course, which really makes Malvolio seem very lewd in that moment and quite. It makes him seem much more foolish. Now, the script doesn't indicate that action. That's a directorial choice. The directorial choice is informed by the way that the director wants the audience to react to the character. They are playing up the comedy here, and you've got to understand that playing up the comedy diminishes the seriousness of what's going on. Playing up Malvolio as the fool means that the audience, the viewer, is less likely to see what is happening to him as unfortunate, as unfair, and as problematic. So the effect of this adaptation, the effect of those choices, is to change our reaction to the character, to change our exploration, or to make it less likely that our reaction to the play is one where the class structure is problematic, or the class mistreatment is problematized. So this scene is a great example of even where, a half a dozen choices completely eliminates really the likelihood that anyone in the audience in the Globe Theatre or watching the DVD of this at home is going to go, poor Malvolio. Shakespeare's commenting on the fact that, you can't shift your class status. Marx is rolling in his grave. You're not going to do that, because all that we're being driven to do is to say, silly Malvolio, how foolish he is to be convinced that he's as good as he is. It's completely supporting that class reading. It's completely supporting the idea that this is something that Malvolio is foolish to think that he's capable of. And so the alteration, even though very minor, even though only a half a dozen or so things, it really obscures potential meanings in the script.
Heaven restore thee.
Remember who commended thy yellow stockings,
Thy yellow stockings,
and wished to see thee ever cross-gartered?
cross-gartered.
I say, go to, thou art made, if thou desirest to be so.
Am I a maid?
Oh.
So even things like the choice of actor, I think that moment is a great example. If that was anyone but Stephen Fry, it wouldn't carry with it all of the associations we have with Stephen Fry as a slightly pompous, slightly upper crusty sort of dude himself. And if you know anything about Stephen Fry's been to jail for credit card theft. He's been a terrible cocaine addict. He's had his problems. but he comes from the upper class end of society. He's friends with Prince Charles. He brings with him all of those characteristics. So, and even the choice of Mark Rylance as a male playing a female role for a modern audience increases the comedy, because you've got that strange modulation of voice, which is very strange, and you've got the comedy of Stephen Fry, a very notable homosexual man, sort of thrusting at a male dressed in women's clothing. Like, there's all of these elements that just make it so much funnier and play into the way that they want us supposedly to see Malvolio here as foolish. And so all of those things rolled together, as I'm saying, I think you're getting a fairly clear idea, is that I feel like we could play Malvolio, we could play the play or read the play as a really shocking indictment on the class system, but that's completely removed here.
If not, let me see thee a servant still.
Why, this is very midsummer madness.
Madam, the young gentleman of the Count Orsino's is returned. I could hardly entreat him back. He attends your ladyship's pleasure.
Oh. I'll come to him. Good Maria, let this fellow be looked to. Where's Cousin Toby? Let some of my people have a special care of him. I would not have him miscarry for the half of my dowry.
Do you come near me now? No worse man than Sir Toby to look to me. Why, this concurs directly with the letter. She sends for him on purpose that I may appear stubborn with him, for she incites me to that in the letter. Cast thy humble slough, says she, be opposite with a kinsman, surly with servants, let thy tongue tang with arguments of state, put thyself into the trick of singularity.
Now, let me pose a question to you here. If you were to read this long piece of dialogue, this it's a soliloquy, but it's not a traditional soliloquy because it's not in iambic pentameter, it's in blank verse. So it's a soliloquy that reminds us in its style of Malvolio's status within the play as a lowly character. But he's speaking to the audience the truth. Soliloquies are, by definition, the inner truth of that character. They're their way of exploring and explaining the way they actually think and feel. So we know that Malvolio is speaking truth. He is explaining to the audience that he is being driven by the letter that he's received, that he's confused by the letter that he's received, that the signals that he's getting are mixed, but the letter tells him to believe them, to not resist, not be denied. And so if you think about that soliloquy and the effect of this dialogue, the effect of him checking and rechecking and explaining himself and double checking that he's doing the right thing, you could read this as confirmation that he's being manipulated, confirmation that the deception is unfair. But think about the way that this performance has set Malvolio up, and think about how the continued reading of this note and delivery of this soliloquy continues that characterization. The facial expressions, the sort of slightly manic performance, make sure that we are reminded that he's a fool, rather than reminding us, which the script could do and the performance could do if it was done differently, reminding us that he's doing what he believes is the thing that he's been asked to do, which makes him a more sympathetic character. So those two possibilities are there, and the choices that the actor, that the director, the stage manager, all of the people involved in the production are making are pushing it us further and further and further away from supporting and empathizing with Malvolio's plight.
Consequently sets down the manner how, as with a sad face, a reverent carriage, a slow tongue, in the habit of some sir of note, and so forth. I have limed her. But it is Jove's doing, and Jove make me thankful. But when she went away, now, Let this fellow be looked to. Fellow. No, not Malvolio, nor after my degree, but fellow. Why, everything adheres together, that no dram of a scruple, no scruple of a scruple, no obstacle, no incredulous or unsafe circumstance, nothing that can be, can come between me and the full prospect of my hopes. Well, Jove is the doer of this, not I. And he is to be thanked.
So hopefully you could see there, the way he spoke the words, the tone behind them, they all pushed us towards that, what a fool. But if you read that, you could try reading that to elicit sympathy. Try thinking about how you could do things, talking about Jove, which is talking about, God in a sense, fate. The line that I think, let this fellow be looked to, fellow, not Malvolio, nor after my degree, but fellow. How he delivered that made him seem proud, which makes him seem foolish. But if instead it made him seem worried, what would the effect be? Because that really matters. Okay, so what I want you to continue to think about, just while I play this next section through, I'm not going to talk about it because I'm going to run out of time, but as I play this next section through, how does Sir Toby's sort of attack on Malvolio sit within the fact that Stephen Fry's performance has pushed us towards seeing Malvolio as foolish? Is he deserving of the malice that Sir Toby's deception brings forth? If instead we'd been positioned to see him as hardly done by or perhaps sympathetic, how would we therefore interpret Sir Toby and Sir Toby's sort of, very harsh treatment, his dedication to making Malvolio believe that he's insane?
Which way is he in the name of sanctity? If all the devils of hell be drawn in little, and Legion himself possessed him, yet I'll speak to him. Here he is!
Look at the high chin.
You, sir.
Continues that position.
How is been you, man? Go off. I discard you. Let me enjoy my private. Go off.
Lo, how hollow the fiend speaks.
The pace, the tone of Malvolio is all feeding into this.
Praise you to have a care of him.
Aha, does she so?
Peace, peace. We must deal gently with him. Let me alone.
Now it's comedic, but it's concern. They are being accurate in their deception. Think about that prop, that image.
Do you know
The use of the Bible,
Oh, lie you
The-
when you speak ill of the devil, how he takes it at heart. Pray God he be
the
not
accusation of being
Is there water to the wise
Marion,
woman?
possessed
it's done tomorrow
in that
morning,
context.
My lady would not lose him for more than I'll say.
Aha, no.
Prithee, hold thy peace. This is not the way. Do you not see? You move him. Let me alone.
So I'm pausing it mainly to let the computer catch up, but that's a signal that I might run out of time here. You have to remember the context is this highly religious world in which the concept of possession, the concept of devils, all of that supernatural belief is taken to be real. And so the accusations that they're placing, and they know that they are false, upon Malvolio are incredibly serious. But being presented in this comedic way, it makes it seem like more of a joke. That they're playing with Malvolio. But think about the actual reality of it. This is an accusation that he is the devil in an incredibly religious, incredibly superstitious world. This could mean this person would be locked up for the rest of their lives, and in this case, unjustly. Their whole rationale, their whole sort of excuse for being able to do this is that He thinks he's better than he actually is. He's trying to rise above his class. Now, that doesn't sit comfortably within the modern world, I don't think, because it doesn't seem justifiable, particularly in an Australian society where we like to see ourselves as classless. So for a modern audience, which the Globe Theatre is, but also for a viewer in an Australian context, this interpretation perhaps doesn't sit great with us.
Gently, gently. The field is rough and will not be roughly used.
How now, my poor Tom, how dost thou love? Sir, I bid thee come with me. What man is not for gravity to play a terrific mistake to hang him foul coldly out to say his prayers, good to begin to pray prayers? Never, my warrant you, will not hear of godliness.
Go hang yourselves all! You are idle, shallow things. I am not of your element.
Now, if you think about the prop use here, he's draped himself almost in the manner of a Roman nobility. This is really impactful, and the way he delivers the line is not as an accusation or a defense. It's more as an accusation against their unfairness. It's more of a presentment of himself as deserving their respect. And so this continues his characterization as foolish and continues our push towards us seeing him as a foolish character who's deserving of his comeuppance, rather than him saying, the line, if he was to deliver the line instead as, a defeated character, go hang yourselves, you are idle, shallow things, I am not of your element, you shall no more hereafter, as he's dragged out, sort of as a defeated character, then that would have a completely different effect. And I think it's perfectly captured in the use of the cloak or the piece, the fabric, almost as if it's a royal garb rather than the thing that he's going to be tied up in.
You shall know more
hereafter.
And we'll stop at that point. So I want you to think about how, in this instance, those few changes, that alteration in the potential characterization of Malvolio completely alters the way that we are pushed in terms of understanding or choosing to read the play. I am doing a very resistant reading of the way that this is being presented to demonstrate the fact that the play script leaves either reading open, the reading of Malvolio as deserving of his comeuppance, or the reading of Malvolio as as a character subjected to unfairness. They lead us to very different places. One is in support of the class system, and the other one is denouncing the class system. So we don't know which way Shakespeare is leaning. We don't know, what his views and values are. The text contains the values of both. The performance very clearly goes with a reading where we're meant to see Malvolio as that Puritan who's hypocritical and therefore deserving of his comeuppance. What I'm saying is, a potential reading is, Malvolio as a lower class servant is being kept as a submissive. And that does not come through in this production. Again, you can try writing about that scene and the differences between the play script's potential and the performance's choices in the way that it brings about certain readings. I'm deliberately applying a theoretical perspective to this because it is something that you need to continue to work into your discussions of the text. Okay, so the rest of Act 3, Scene 4 is important. You could compare the script's discussion of the Sir Andrew and Viola fight sequence, if you like. It's meant to be a funny scene, whereas I think this one was better to look at because it has such divergent readings. That's a half an hour, so you've got over 80 minutes of video there to look at on Act 3 that should help you with your questions and should help you with the preparation towards comparison of adaptation.